joined by Brad Keselowski, driver of the #2 Alliance Truck Parts Ford for Team Penske. Brad, slow news week for you here. As you gained a new teammate in Ryan Blaney, and then you decided to re-sign for a long-term deal with Team Penske. Just walk us through that process and how good it is to come into this week knowing you have that behind you and your future set in stone.
Yeah, it's certainly a good thing, without a doubt. Those things are tough, and they never go as easily or smoothly as you want them to go. But I think, the most important thing is that, they're done, and we can look forward with a lot of stability, and that stability is important for a number of reasons. It's obviously important for me as a race car driver that I have a place to work and to drive and pursue my passion. But more than that, there's a place for, the 100 or so people that work specifically on my team and the 400 or so people that work collectively at Team Penske to, keep going and keep working. So I'm happy for those guys. And then to have the stability as well, with respect to sponsors and all those things to, continue to showcase them and hopefully be a place to keep the business model working in a way that drives value for them and keeps us on the track in a competitive form. So, those contracts are a big deal. I think sometimes to our fans, they're probably not a big deal, and I understand that. But to the livelihood of the sport and the livelihood of everybody in the room, they certainly are. So it's nice to have those done and to be able to worry about, the true passion point we have, which is the actual racing on the track.
Okay, let's open the floor for questions. We'll get a wireless microphone to you. Let's start with Zach and go to Lee, then to Jerry.
Zach Sterniolo with the Pocono Record. With this two-day schedule, and qualifying being right before the race, how much is that going to affect your qualifying setup as opposed to what you would normally run here, and how much does it change your weekend routine?
It's a good question, Zach. I think that me personally, I don't think it's going to be a big deal. I haven't done the Xfinity races where they qualify on race mornings and all that. I didn't think it was much of a game changer. It does put a lot on one day, to be able to qualify and then race. And I'm sure there's going to be a load of sponsor commitments in between. But all in all, I think you're gaining a day back on, your Thursdays or Fridays, whatever they might be, that kind of offset those loads. And to me, it's kind of, at this point, net neutral. So I guess we'll see after we get a few of these under our belt how that goes. But I really haven't formed much of an opinion yet because I'd like to get a few under my belt. But having the experience from the Xfinity side, I didn't think it was a big deal. But, Cup is always a little different, and I'm sure there will be some things that pop up that didn't pop up over there, and for good or bad.
We'll go Lee, Jerry, then Bob.
Lee Spencer, Motorsport.com. I take it there was never really any question of you leaving Team Penske. Would that be correct?
I didn't have any intent. The whole time I wanted to get a deal done there. I never personally reached out to anyone else. I think there might have been some opportunities elsewhere, but I'm a big believer that Roger gave me a great opportunity, 7 or 8 years ago, and I wanted to see that continue to play out. I kind of wanted to water my own grass, and I felt like I had that opportunity. It's just a matter of working out all the pieces of the puzzle to do so. And it also kind of seems like every year on these deals that if they're not done by February, 12 months ahead of time, everybody starts to panic. And, so when you get a deal done in July, everybody kind of looks at you and says, what took so long? And in some respects, you're thinking, yeah, I wish it got done sooner. And then other respects, you kind of go, well, time out. I still have 6 more months to where it really mattered. So, I can kind of see both sides of that. But at the end of the day, to kind of summarize, Lee, I feel like I have a great group. We've won races, usually multiple races every season I've been a part of the 2-car. And I think we're going to have that opportunity for years to come. And as a driver, I think that's a good thing to have.
And was there any element in your contract or your negotiations to help you secure up funding and support for the truck teams, which from what I understand from talking to people close to you, has become increasingly important in your life?
Yeah, it is something that's important to me, and I think I had to be careful to not let the tail wag the dog. At the end of the day, the Truck Series model is one that for me to participate in, I have to be willing to make financial sacrifices or just lose money, and being a race car driver is what makes that possible. So I have to be really careful with all that.
We'll go Jerry, Bob, Dustin, Jeff.
Jerry Jordan, KickingTheTires.net and PRN. Brad, there's a lot of negotiations going on with contracts for drivers and teams and sponsors right now. Are drivers having to take less, or are sponsors offering less, in your knowledge of what the money is on the table for you guys?
Everybody wants more for less. I think that's not just in the NASCAR sponsorship market. That's really in every market. And business models are changing rapidly as our world changes rapidly with respect to communications and next generation and consumption habits. There's a lot of reasons why. I think that sponsorship contracts are going to continue to evolve and change, and the traditional model is probably going to go extinct very soon. If could be argued, probably is getting there right now. The traditional model just being a consumer brand sponsor that just wants to see a car out there with their name on it. I would expect that'll go extinct in the next few years, and that's not always a bad thing. There's other models that work and have proven to be successful, and the teams, although the owners might not agree with it, are still relatively healthy in a lot of regards. I guess time will tell what the true model is 10 years from now. And I don't think anybody really knows, but I don't think we have it as bad as maybe sometimes we like to say we do.
Bob?
Bob Hockress, ESPN. What does the addition of a third Cup car mean for Penske, if anything?
Well, hopefully it means more depth, more ability to extend resources into engineering, Bob, to where you can make the car faster. The biggest battle we have right now in motorsports is aerodynamics. The teams keep pushing aerodynamics further and further, and in order to improve that, it's just really the amount of time and energy you can spend on it. So the more people you have, the more revenue you have, the more you can work in those areas with engineering tools or experiments to get better. So, there's a lot of hope with respect to that. But it's not just in aerodynamics. That also carries over to the engine side with Roush Yates engines and a number of other categories of depth, whether it be pit crew or shop mechanics and fabricators and beyond. So, assuming that it's pulled off and executed in the right way at those levels, it should be a gain for everyone within Team Penske.
Dustin, Jeff, then Dan.
Dustin Long, NBC Sports. How much do you lament the loss of 5 playoff points from last weekend with how close you were? And
well, not just there.
And how do you foresee those playoff points impacting things?
Well, I think the playoff points are probably understated with respect to, we ran the model really early after the announcement, and, it would have made a big difference in almost every season as to who made the championship four with, having playoff bonus points. And it's going to make a big difference, I think, this year. I don't think it's going to change. So, those things add up really quickly. It's also important to note that there's, more points to be earned this year. So when you do fall behind, 40 used to be a lot. And don't get me wrong, it still is 40 points. Now, a 40-point race is, a top 5 point day. If you kind of accumulate, I call it top 5 point day. If you kind of accumulate at the end of the race what everyone scored for points, 40 points is usually about fifth, give or take, depending on any race weekend. Where 40 points before was like winning the race. So the gaps are a little bit bigger. We've obviously scored more points this year than every other season because of the stage points. So I think there's a little bit of a balance there, but in general, I feel pretty certain that the playoff points will change who makes the playoffs this year versus if there wasn't any playoff points into the final round. So I hope that made sense to you.
Do you feel, if you get those 5 points, another 5 points is what you're at, that's the difference between advancing to the second round, the third round, or the third round at home? Did that, if you go back and look at it, do you feel like in a way that might have hurt make it less easier to get to homestead?
Yeah.
By not getting that 5
Absolutely, but I wouldn't say that was just Indy where I felt that way. I felt that way, I think at Vegas and Richmond were 2 races where we finished second or had a shot at leading or winning the race. We were leading, and it kind of fell apart at the end. But, there's other races where I would say we won Atlanta, and, Kevin was probably the best car there. And like anything else, you kind of have to say there's sometimes you win where you probably shouldn't have, and sometimes you don't win where you probably should have, and you hope to, be on the better side of that, steal more than you have stolen, and it never feels like you are. But, in general, I think that's kind of the bigger picture look that I have at it.
We'll go
Dustin.
Jeff, Dan, then Robbie.
Jeff Gluck from jeffgluck.com. Brad, in the press release about your extension, twice it said the phrase "well into the future" as far as your terms.
Yeah.
What does "well into the future" mean? Does that mean that you'll probably finish your career at Team Penske?
Well into the future. Well into the future means that some people hate when you say how many years. I don't particularly care, but they ask me not to. And so, because they pay the bills, I say yes, sir. But I hope to be a race car driver at this level in my 40s, which is 7 years from now. I don't feel comfortable in saying that my contract is not for that long. So there's no guarantees that I'll be at Team Penske for the rest of my career, but hopefully when the next process comes up, I'll be able to have that opportunity to do so.
Dan?
Dan Gelson, Associated Press. Brad, you said there might come a time where sponsors may not want their logo, I guess, on the car.
Well, not necessarily their logo, but they won't be just a pure consumer brand.
Okay. Do you see sponsors wanting anything different out of your relationship moving forward in general? I mean, is the sponsor driver, sponsor team dynamic changing at all that you've noticed?
Yeah, they just want clearer ROI. If you look at the model of 10 to 20 years ago, where all right, we put a sticker on the car and it feels good, looks good, but nobody knows what the hell it means. That day's kind of gone. Everybody wants a number to show a CEO or a board. So if you're in charge of these programs, data and analytics has really driven how these programs are viewed, whether that's successful or not. And sometimes I think that's good. Sometimes I think that's bad. There's a lot of things that feel right that don't necessarily have a number that show right. And I think sometimes motorsports falls in that category, but not all the time. But I think the biggest thing in general is that, corporate America is becoming, in my eyes, much more analytics driven. And that's really hard to do for any consumer brand. But it's becoming more important for those brands. So, hitting the analytics question just right is really the key to this sport to be successful long term in the current model. So that means being able to sit in front of a board or a CEO and answer tough questions and have analytics that showcase value. And I think there are a lot of great analytics that do so, but maybe not enough focus put into that category across the sport to be able to execute that.
We'll go right here to the front here to Robbie.
Hey, Robbie.
Robbie Boyd, Sports Illustrated Kids. How old were you when you figured out that you wanted to become a NASCAR driver?
How old was I? I get this question quite a bit. And every time I get it, I have a memory lapse because I don't remember there ever being a time where I didn't want to be a race car driver. I remember moments where it meant more to me. Like, I'll never forget the first time I rode in my dad in a race car. He let me drive it up in the trailer. I remember thinking how cool that was. But I don't ever remember like a aha moment. This is what I want to do. Because I don't remember ever not wanting to do it. So I would say since the earliest days I can remember, which isn't very good. I don't remember anything before 6. So I don't know what that means, but maybe I've hit too many walls. But that's my answer. I hope that's a good answer, Robbie.
Thank you.
No problem.
Well, Brad, thanks for taking the time to join us today. Good luck
Great.
this weekend.
I was the warm-up act for Dale Jr.?
You are. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
That's good. Hope nobody wasted their good questions.